Hi. This is welcome to drafting and a video or Vectorworks introduction. There are a ton of Vectorworks tutorials available. I find that sometimes they cover things that we don't necessarily use, and other times they omit things that are very useful. And I will provide both. There will be mine, and I will also provide links to outside resources on our online learning platform. But what I want to do is just give you an introduction to Vectorworks. The first thing you're going to need to do is to go to nemachek.com and then download Vectorworks. This version that I'm currently using is 2020, although most of what I'm going to talk to you about is available in many versions earlier, and I will hope in subsequent versions that just change their syntax and their layout a little bit. So it should be applicable across the board. So why don't we just jump in and let me go over. Now when you start Vectorworks, it's going to take it a few minutes to load. This is a very, very large program. It has a lot. I probably only know and use maybe 10% of what is available. So just so you know. But once you start it, let it go ahead and open. And this may or may not be the screen that you open into depending on what you have downloaded. But what we're going to want to work with is going to be the version of Spotlight, of Vectorworks that's called Spotlight. And again, this is version 2020. And in the upper left-hand corner up here where my mouse is, you can see that we have Vectorworks Spotlight. So regardless of what you've opened into, the screen layout should be essentially the same. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about right now. So in this upper left-hand corner, it shows the version that you're running and which bundle you're running. So there's Spotlight and Architect and gosh, there's 4 or 5 different ones. But the Spotlight is actually geared towards theatrical lighting designers, which is why lighting designers love it so much. And as we get into it, you'll really understand why. So the next thing that I want to talk about, the next line underneath of that, are what are known as pull-down menus. And files should be fairly straightforward. This is open a new file, right? Create a new file, open recent files, close, save, and save as. And there are more options as we go further down towards the bottom, and we will get into them as we move along. Edit should also be a fairly common one. View is maybe more specific to Vectorworks, as are the others as we move across. But each one of these little text tabs up here pulls down additional information. So it's known as the pull down menu. And to get out of it, just click anywhere. Okay? So then let's talk about this big area that's here underneath. This is actually your drawing space. This is where you will be doing drawings, looking at drawings. This is your active space, and it's surrounded by all this other stuff that we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so underneath of our pull down menus and on the left side are tool menus, right? So they're toolboxes for different sorts of things that you may want to do. And the first one that's listed here is called the basic tool. It's a palette, sorry. So a tool palette. So this is just a way to select to be able to draw lines, to be able to insert text information, to be able to pan and move around, to draw different shapes. These are just your generic old navigation and drawing tools. This is the default tool palette for every drawing space. Below that are a bunch of other tool boxes and tool palettes that we'll get into. There's the 3D modeling, and there's the lighting one, and there's rigging and fasteners and machine tools, and there's all kinds of other tool palettes that we can access, but we'll talk more about those as we move along. All the way to the other side. This is maybe the most important part of Vectorworks. This is called the Object Info Browser, right? So we have the Object Info Browser. So for anything that I draw, and right now I just selected the line tool and I'm going to draw a line, right? This gives me information about whatever shape or item or thing or anything. It gives me information about what it is. And depending on what the shape is, will give me a lot of different information. And we'll spend a whole video on the Object Info browser or the Object Info palette. Okay. Below that is the Resource Manager, which just has a library of objects that you can either insert or that you may already have or that you create. You can just think of it as a library, but rather than storing books, it stores shapes and information about shapes, and it's just a library of resources, and it's called the Resource Manager. Okay, so now we're going to move to the little area above the drawing window, and there are actually two very important lines across here. The first is going to be the view bar, and the view bar is all about how you look at the document and how you might change the document. And I will go into much greater detail on all of it, but we have a couple of options. There are classes, layers, look at the working plane, how we want to look at the plane. I think these are saved views. This is zoom, fit to page, fit to objects, right? So these are zooms. This is a zoom command. This has to do with working planes and active layer planes, views, more views, world rotation, world view rotation, render mode. All of this up here has to do with views and how we look at our information. All right, so now the next part of this, and probably, well, maybe not quite the tail end of this video, right, is going to be the, I guess I haven't noticed there. The next thing that I have is going to be, this is called the toolbar, and it's right underneath the view bar. The toolbar gives you options for any tool that you might select. Right now I have the line tool selected, and I have options for lines. I can select text, and if I select the text tool, then I have options about how my text is going to be inserted. If I select a shape, I have a variety of options as to how I'm going to draw a rectangle. A circle, the same thing. An oval, also, it just gives me options for every kind of shape or every tool that I might access. And this is universal across all of the toolboxes. Any tool that you select is going to have options in this toolbar area. The default tool is always going to be this selection tool, the pointer tool. You can access it by either clicking the little pointer or by typing X on your keyboard. X will also select the selection tool. Right? The last two palettes I want to talk to you about are currently floating in my drawing. This is your attribute palette and your snapping palette. Now, over the course of time, you will accidentally close, right, a tool palette at some point. I will accidentally close my snapping palette by clicking on that X. It's gonna happen. The way that you get any palette back is to go to the Windows pull-down menu, Window, Palettes, and now I can select any of the palettes that I would like to have restored. I would like to have my snapping palette back. I now have my snapping palette back. I will accidentally click on closing the basic tool palette. Oh my gosh, now what do? I go to Windows, Palettes, and now I can look down and see, oh, there are my basic tools. That's my basic tool palette. Turn that back on and it'll just put it right back where it was. Okay, so that's where I want to end at this point. So we have our pull down menus, right, which are across the top. You have tool palettes along the left. At the top over here, I have object info. Below that, I have the resource manager. I have a view bar. And then I have a toolbar underneath that. And this little tab right up here is just the drawing that I'm currently working on. I can open various drawings. Okay, so this is just a little navigation and introduction. You can open a drawing, and when you open the drawing, then you can save it as whatever you would like to, whatever name you would like to. And we'll go into more detail in the next video. Thanks so much. I'll see you again soon.